Deep in the scorching deserts of North Africa, a shepherd's son transformed himself into one of history's most brutal tyrants. Muammar Gaddafi ruled Libya for 42 years, building a regime soaked in blood, torture, and unspeakable crimes that shocked the world when they finally came to light. What you're about to discover goes beyond ordinary dictatorship. It reveals a monster hiding behind revolutionary speeches and designer uniforms. If you're ready to uncover the horrifying truth that governments tried to hide, hit that subscribe button right now. This is Fleek of History, where we expose the darkest chapters they don't teach in schools. Let's dive in. From desert poverty to absolute power. Born in June 1942 near Sirte in Italian-occupied Libya, Gaddafi emerged from extreme poverty. His father herded camels across barren wasteland, and young Muammar grew up in a traditional goat hair tent without electricity or running water. But this hardship bred ambition. As a teenager, he became obsessed with Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, memorizing revolutionary speeches and dreaming of power. At 19, Gaddafi entered the Royal Military Academy in Benghazi, where he secretly organized fellow officers into what they called the Free Officers Movement. On September 1, 1969, while Libya's aging King Idris received medical treatment abroad, Gaddafi and approximately 70 young officers seized control of the entire nation without firing a shot. At just 27 years old, he became the youngest leader in the Arab world, building a prison nation. Within months, Gaddafi outlawed all political parties and declared opposition to his rule an act of treason. By 1973, he launched his so-called cultural revolution, creating people's committees that functioned as spy networks in schools, universities, and workplaces. Anyone suspected of disloyalty disappeared into a growing network of secret prisons. He published the Green Book in 1975, a bizarre manifesto mixing political theory with Islamic principles that every Libyan child was forced to memorize. Criticizing this book became a crime punishable by imprisonment or death. Meanwhile, Libya's exploding oil revenues, reaching over $10 billion annually by 1979, funded an expanding security apparatus designed to crush dissent, the terror campaign against exiles. In 1980, Gaddafi announced his stray dogs policy, a chilling assassination program targeting critics living abroad. Libya's external security organization hunted down dissidents across Europe, murdering at least 25 people between 1980 and 1987 in cities like London, Rome, and Milan. Victims were shot in their apartments, stabbed on streets, or poisoned. In 1984, gunfire from Libya's London embassy killed British police officer Yvonne Fletcher during a peaceful protest, severing diplomatic ties between the countries. Back home, public executions became entertainment. On April 7, 1977, students detained from protests were publicly hanged in Benghazi, with thousands forced to watch in person and millions more viewing the spectacle on live television. April 7th became an annual anniversary celebrated with public executions of civilians and defected officials that continued until the late 1980s. One particularly notorious execution involved al-Sadek Hamed al-Shuaidi, a Libyan aeronautical engineer who had returned from studying in America and participated in peaceful protests. The regime labeled him a terrorist from the Muslim Brotherhood to justify his sentence. He was executed in a large basketball stadium with thousands of people, mostly school children forced to attend as a school trip, watching from the stands. Abu Salim, Libya's death factory. The Abu Salim prison in Tripoli became synonymous with unimaginable horror. Prisoners lived in filthy, overcrowded cells infested with rats, forced to eat rotten bug-infested food and grass, and to drink and urinate from the same cup. Guards tortured inmates on a regular basis with boulders and batons. Torture methods included opening prisoners' knees with razor blades and pouring salt into the wounds, extracting teeth and nails, inserting heated iron rods into victims' bodies, and unleashing military attack dogs on defenseless inmates. On June 29, 1996, Abu Salim witnessed one of the worst prison massacres in modern history. Approximately 1,270 prisoners had protested unbearable conditions, demanding improved conditions, care for the sick, and trials to prove their innocence. Abdullah Sanusi, one of Gaddafi's most feared commanders, led government negotiators who met with prisoner representatives in what turned out to be fake negotiations. The next morning, prisoners were rounded up into courtyards and security forces opened fire from rooftops. Eyewitnesses reported hearing non-stop gunfire for 2 straight hours. Survivors of the initial attack were executed at point-blank range. The bodies of victims were burned, and the bones were ground up and dumped into the sea. For years, Gaddafi's government denied the massacre ever happened. The hidden harem of horrors. While Gaddafi publicly championed women's rights and education, he operated a sophisticated sexual predator network that targeted schoolgirls and young women. His main compound, Bab al-Azizia, contained specially designed rooms with no windows, underground bunkers, and fully equipped gynecological examination suites where victims were tested for diseases before being assaulted. School principals, bodyguards, and senior officials worked together to identify and kidnap girls, some as young as 14, directly from classrooms during school hours. They would simply take the girl they wanted, recalled one Tripoli teacher. They had no conscience, no morals, not an iota of mercy, even though she was a mere child. Families were too terrified to resist, knowing opposition meant death. Victims were held for days, months, or years, subjected to repeated assault, beatings, and psychological torture. Some were drugged, others were chained in locked rooms under constant camera surveillance. The women would first be raped by the dictator, then passed on, like used objects, to one of his sons, and eventually to high-ranking officials for more abuse. Explains psychologist Saham Sargawa, who interviewed victims for the International Criminal Court. Many victims suffered forced abortions in secret clinics, with babies taken away and never seen again. Some girls who tried to speak out were found dead under suspicious circumstances, with police reports blocked and official records erased. Others were discovered months later cut, raped, and lying in the middle of a park, left for dead. Boys from orphanages and training camps were also abused and used for blackmail against families. Supporting global terrorism. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Gaddafi funded terrorist organizations worldwide. He shipped over 100 tons of weapons to the Irish Republican Army in 1986 and bankrolled militant groups in the Philippines, Palestine, Chad, and Sudan. Libyan agents bombed La Belle nightclub in West Berlin in April 1986, killing 3 people and injuring over 200. The United States responded with airstrikes on April 15, 1986, killing dozens, including Gaddafi's 4-year-old adopted daughter. The Yarmouk warehouse massacre. On August 23, 2011, as rebels closed in on Tripoli, approximately 153 detainees, almost entirely civilians, were held in a warehouse in the Khalida Furjan neighborhood adjacent to the Yarmouk military base. These prisoners were regularly beaten, electrocuted, starved, and even raped. Guards from the Khamis Brigade conducted a roll call and then carried out a vicious attack. Survivors recounted guards opening fire from the roof of the warehouse and throwing grenades into the building. Many detainees were shot and killed during the assault. At least 53 skulls were later found in one location and other corpses were discovered in a nearby shallow grave, but there was a deliberate attempt to destroy victims' bodies. Videos taken at the site showed remains that were mostly ashes. At least 20 people survived the massacre. The Arab Spring unleashes fury. By February 2011, the Arab Spring had toppled dictators in Tunisia and Egypt. On February 15th, Libyans began protesting in Benghazi after authorities arrested human rights lawyer Fathi Terbil, who represented families of Abu Salim massacre victims. The demonstrations spread rapidly to other cities. Gaddafi's response was savage. As early as February 17th, Gaddafi enlisted mercenaries as snipers to fire directly at unarmed demonstrators. Government troops alongside mercenaries cracked down violently, shooting hundreds of unarmed civilians and even crushing them to death using tanks. Bodies piled up on the streets while hospitals overflowed with injured victims suffering gunshot wounds to the head, neck, and chest. Eyewitnesses reported tanks crushing civilians in their path. Ambulances were blocked by government troops from entering areas to save lives. According to Luis Moreno Ocampo, then chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, between 500 and 700 civilians were killed by Gaddafi's security forces in February 2011 alone, before anti-Gaddafi forces had even taken up arms. Gaddafi's forces shelled towns with heavy weapons, constantly bombarding and destroying houses. Hospitals were repeatedly bombed and targeted. Loyalist troops targeted civilian vehicles, with one attack killing a mother with her 4 children, the oldest being 13. In Misrata, the city faced a 4-month siege by pro-Gaddafi forces. Hundreds of civilians were murdered by bombing and shelling of homes and bakeries. Cluster bombs, illegal under international law, were used to destroy civilian infrastructure. During the 2011 conflict, Gaddafi's forces committed widespread rape with over 8,000 cases reported. Many women were stripped naked, raped, and then killed in front of their male relatives. Captured mercenaries admitted they were forced by officers to enter homes, tie up and shoot the males, and rape the women and girls. One mercenary testified. The girls said nothing. They were tired and they were in bad shape because there were 20 officers before us. It happened in the morning and lasted about an hour and a half. The officers brought in a music system and listened to pop music and smoked and danced during the rapes. Psychologist Saham Sergewa interviewed 295 women who reported being raped, all attributing the assaults to Gaddafi's soldiers. These women described horrific experiences, including gang rapes and being raped in front of their husbands, who were then killed. The final hunt. As NATO airstrikes pounded his military, Gaddafi fled Tripoli in late August 2011. He retreated to his hometown of Sirte with a shrinking group of loyalists, On October 20th, 2011, NATO surveillance drones spotted a convoy of approximately 50 vehicles attempting to escape. French jets bombed the convoy, destroying several vehicles. Gaddafi survived the strike and fled on foot, hiding in a drainage pipe beneath the road. Rebel fighters from Misrata discovered him shortly after, pulling him from the tunnel disoriented and bleeding. Video footage shows him being beaten by the crowd and loaded into a pickup truck. Within hours, he was dead from gunshot wounds. His son Mutasim, captured alongside him, was also killed that day. Gaddafi's body was displayed in a refrigerated meat locker in Misrata for 4 days, where thousands of Libyans lined up to see the man who had terrorized them for 42 years. He was buried in an unmarked desert grave to prevent it from becoming a shrine. Uncovering the evidence. After his death, investigators discovered the full extent of his crimes. Inside Bab al-Azizia, they found rooms built for detention and torture, some hidden behind steel doors or beneath floors. There were cells with bloodstains, restraints on walls, and shelves containing surveillance recordings. Underground chambers held surgical beds and medical equipment, confirming victims' testimonies about systematic abuse. Mass graves were uncovered near Abu Salim prison and throughout Libya, some containing over 200 unidentified bodies. Government offices yielded files documenting assassinations, phone taps on citizens, and detailed records of foreign terrorist operations. Abdullah Sanusi, architect of the Abu Salim massacre, was arrested in Mauritania in March 2012 while traveling under a false identity. He was extradited to Libya and charged with crimes against humanity. A nation still bleeding. Gaddafi's fall didn't bring peace. Libya fractured into competing militias and rival governments. Weapons stockpiles were looted and smuggled to terrorist groups across North and West Africa, fueling violence in Mali, Nigeria, and the Sahel region. Many victims still await justice. Some bodies have never been recovered. The man who claimed to be a revolutionary, a champion of the people, left behind a nation unable to heal from decades of systematic brutality, sexual violence, torture, and murder. His legacy is measured in mass graves, destroyed families, and a country still searching for stability more than a decade after his death. This is the truth they tried to bury. If this opened your eyes to history's darkest corners, smash that like button and subscribe to Fleek of History. Drop a comment telling us what shocked you most. We're just getting started exposing the tyrants and monsters the world forgot. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next investigation into the shadows of history.